here's your host, John, with more classic movie reviews.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to snarkymoviereviews.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All I ask is that you jump over to iTunes and give me a review. Today's movie is White Christmas, 1954. Don't ever watch this movie. I only selected it so I could use the von Scherbach quote from Stalag 17, 1953.
Good morning, sergeants. Nasty weather we are having, eh? And I so much hoped we could give you a white Christmas, just like the ones you used to know. And those the words that clever little man wrote, you know, the one who stole his name from our capital, that something or other Berlin.
This film has entirely too much singing, even for a musical. The dancing, however, was excellent.
The actors.
Bing Crosby played singer Bob Wallace. Crosby was born in Washington in 1903. Crosby studied law at Gonzaga University, but was more interested in singing in local bands. In 1925, Bing and part of the band left for Los Angeles. Bing eventually signed with CBS and was very popular in the Depression years. His first movie was The Big Broadcast, 1932. He made a series of 7 road movies with Bob Hope. These films are mostly gags and music and are Road to Singapore, 1940, Road to Zanzibar, 1941, Road to Morocco, 1942, Road to Utopia, 1946, Road to Rio, 1947, Road to Bali, 1952, and The Road to Hong Kong, 1962. Bing had dramatic chops as well. He won the Best Actor Oscar playing a priest in Going My Way, 1944, and played an alcoholic opposite Grace Kelly in The Country Girl, 1954. One of Bing's greatest loves was playing golf. At the age of 74, he died on a golf course in Spain. Danny Kaye played singer and dancer Phil Davis. Kaye was born in New York City in 1911.
I'm walking here!
He left school at 13 and began working the resort circuit in the Catskills. In 1939, he made his debut on Broadway. It took Samuel Goldwyn a while, but he finally got Kaye to sign a movie contract. MGM placed him in color musicals beginning with Up in Arms, 1944. Other great movies followed, like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, 1947, The Inspector General, 1949, and White Christmas, 1954. It can easily be argued that his best film was The Court Jester, 1955, with its famous poison pellet routine. Kaye had the Danny Kaye Show on television from 1963 to 1967. One of his last roles was as a Holocaust survivor in Skokie, 1981, which I believe was a television movie. Kaye died in 1987 at the age of 76. Rosemary Clooney played singer Betty Hayes. Clooney was born in 1928 in Kentucky. At the age of 13 in 1941, she sang on the radio. At this station, she was able to work with Doris Day and Andy Williams. A singing star, she had many hits. Her biggest movie was White Christmas, 1954. She married Jose Ferrer in 1953, divorced him, and married him again in 1964. Let's see. That milk is spoiled. I'll put it back in the refrigerator and try it again in a couple of weeks. Clooney had a nervous breakdown in 1968 and didn't resume her career until 1976. Clooney died in 2002 at the age of 74. Her nephew is, of course, actor George Clooney. Vera-Ellen, that's her first name, played the role of younger sister Judy Hayes. Vera-Ellen was a perky dancer. She was born in Ohio in 1921. As a sickly kid, she began dancing at the age of 9. As a teen, she was such a good dancer that she was working in clubs and was one of the youngest Rockettes. At the age of 18 in 1939, she made her Broadway debut. She began working in movies in 1945. Her first 2 movies, Wonder Man, 1945, and The Kid from Brooklyn, 1946, were musical showcases for a young Danny Kaye. But by the end, the public was in love with Vera-Ellen. She held her own with Gene Kelly in Words and Music, 1948, and again in On the Town, 1949, playing Miss Turnstiles. Vera-Ellen worked with Fred Astaire in Three Little Words, 1950, and The Belle of New Orleans, 1952. She was paired with Donald O'Connor in Call Me Madam 1953. Of course, in White Christmas 1954, she worked with Bing Crosby, Kaye, and Rosemary Clooney. As the popularity of the musicals declined in the late 1950s, her career suffered as well. She showed that she could handle regular dramas in Big Leaguer 1953 with Edward G. Robinson. Vera-Ellen did some television and Vegas work, but her personal life began to take a toll. Prior to medical awareness of the disease, Vera-Ellen was suffering from anorexia. She also developed debilitating arthritis. She had 2 failed marriages and lost a child to crib death. Little was heard from her for decades until it was discovered that she had died in 1981 at the age of 60 following a bout with cancer. Dean Yeager was cast as Major General Thomas S. Waverly. Yeager was born in Ohio in 1903. He dropped out of high school 2 times but eventually made it through Wabash College. For a brief time, he was a school teacher before becoming interested in drama. He studied at the Lyceum Art Conservatory in Chicago. Yeager's first movie, The Woman from Hell, 1929, was silent. He became a character actor and had 132 films and television credits. Some of his better-known roles include White Christmas, 1954, Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955, the cult classic Vanishing Point, 1971, where he played a prospector, and television's Mr. Novak, 1963-65, where he played a school principal. However, he is best known for his role in 12 O'Clock High, 1949, where he played a soldier going through his Second World War. Yes, it was World War II, but it was the second time he had fought in a world war. For this role, he won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Yeager died in California in 1991. Mary Wicks played resort worker Emma Allen. Wicks was born in 1910 in St. Louis. Born into a wealthy family, she was a debutante and graduated from Washington University. She began working in summer stock. She quickly transitioned onto Broadway. A lanky jokestress, she was signed by Warner Brothers. Roles during this period include The Man Who Came to Dinner, 1942, Now Voyager, 1942, Who Done It, 1942, A Whack in Private Buckaroo, 1942, Happy Land, 1943, and My Kingdom for a Cook, 1943. She also continued to work on Broadway and in television. Her best-known television role was as Miss Cathcart in Dennis the Menace, 1959 to 1962. Some of her later roles were her best. She played the role of Sister Clarissa in The Trouble with Angels, 1966, and its sequel, Where Angels Go, Trouble Follows, 1968, both with Rosalind Russell. She also played a nun in Sister Act, 1992, and its sequel, Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit, 1993. Other roles included Postcards from the Edge, 1990, Little Women, 1994, and the voice of a gargoyle in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1996. This was sadly released after her death. She died at the age of 85 in 1995. Sig Ruman had a small, uncredited bit as an angry landlord. Ruman was first covered in episode 76, House of Frankenstein, 1944.
Story.
The movie begins on Christmas Eve, 1944. American troops are enjoying a song and dance act as shells fall in the distance. It clearly seems to be near the Battle of the Bulge. Captain Bob Wallace, Bing Crosby, a would-be entertainer, Private Phil Davis, Kaye, are performing on stage. Bob sings the song White Christmas. On another part of the base, Major General Thomas F. Waverly, Dean Yeager, is being relieved of command. The new general states that they should not be having a crowded show this close to the front line. Waverly sends the new general the long way around to the headquarters and ducks into the back of the show. At the end of the show, he steps up, gives a speech, and Wallace and Keyes lead the men in singing The Old Man. But there is no time for tears as an artillery attack takes place, proving the new general correct and explaining why Waverly is getting relieved. This is just my opinion and is not in the movie. During the artillery attack, Davis saves Wallace's life when a wall almost falls on him. Davis is wounded during the rescue. Later at the hospital, Davis asks to be part of his act and leverages the wound to become part of the new duo. About 10 years after the war, the duo is big time. They have been in nightclubs, on the radio, and on Broadway. They have finally turned to producing, and they are on the hunt for new talent. While in Florida planning for a new show, the 2 confirmed bachelors hear from their old Army mess sergeant, Freckleface Haynes, the dog-faced boy, played by Alfalfa, asking them to look in on his 2 sisters' act. Since he is the dog-faced boy, they don't expect too much in the looks department. They go to the club to see the sisters and are surprised at the talent and good looks of Betty Haynes, Rosemary Clooney, and her sister, Judy, Vera-Ellen. Davis notices that Wallace is interested in Betty, so he starts dancing with Judy. Davis and Judy seem to hit it off right away and break into the song, "The Best Things Happen While You're Dancing." While the other pair is off dancing and singing, Betty reveals to Wallace that the letter really came from Judy and not from their old army buddy. The manager comes in and says the sheriff and an irate landlord, Sig Ruman, are there to arrest the sisters for allegedly destroying the rug in their room. Davis really wants to help, but Wallace is not so sure. Davis gives the sisters their tickets for the northbound train and helps them slip out the back. Davis and Wallace then go on stage, in drag, and lip-sync one of the sisters' tunes. Davis is having way too much fun. The two guys make it to the train, but Davis then has to tell Wallace that he gave away their tickets and their sleeping berths to the sisters. The four meet that night, and everyone gets along quite well. The sisters are heading to the Columbia Inn in Pine Tree, Vermont, so the boys decide to tag along. When they get to Vermont, they find it has not snowed since Thanksgiving. They travel to the inn where the sisters are told by resort worker Emma Allen, Mary Wicks, that the gig has been canceled due to lack of tourists. Shortly thereafter, Wallace and Davis find out that the inn is owned by their old commander, General Waverly. Waverly has invested all of his money in his retirement in the inn and is about to lose it. This doesn't ring true, as those sweet military retirement checks come in every month just like clockwork. Wallace and Davis decide to help by bringing their new musical Playing Around to the inn for a Christmas Eve show. What a couple of rat bastards, making those guys work on Christmas Eve. They also add the sisters to the show. Wallace and Betty's relationship is starting to heat up, and they show it by singing Count Your Blessings. At the same time, General Waverly's request to rejoin the army is rejected. Wait a minute. He was relieved during the Battle of the Bulge when the Nazis were winning, and he sat out the Korean conflict, and then he tries to go back on active duty in peacetime? Anyway, the general is feeling forgotten, and Wallace is determined to show him he is not. Wallace calls his old army buddy, Ed Harrison, Johnny Grant. Harrison is the host of a very popular variety show on television. Wallace asks if he can make a pitch to the men of the general's old division to come to the Christmas Eve show and make the end successful. Harrison wants to bring his television show to Vermont and smaltz it up. There's a surprising amount of Yiddish in this film, and I had to look this one up. It means excessive sentimentality, especially in music or movies, or corny. Unknown to the men on the call, housekeeper Emma Allen has been listening on the extension, but has only heard the smaltz part before Wallace dismissed the idea, never wanting to embarrass the general. Emma thinks her boss, the general, is going to be made a figure of pity on national television. She tells what she believes to be true to Betty, who is shocked that Wallace would do such a thing to get publicity for his own show. Betty turns off the love for Wallace and now can't stand to be around him. Judy begins to think Betty will never get into a relationship as long as she is with her younger sister. Judy hatches a plan with Davis, whom she really likes, to announce a fake engagement. As soon as they make the announcement, Betty leaves to take a job in New York City. Davis and Judy go to Wallace and reveal the fake engagement. Still not sure why Betty is mad, Wallace heads to New York City to make it right. Betty sings, "Love, You Didn't Do Right by Me," before her and Wallace talk. She is caving in, but when Harrison shows up, she gets mad again. Back at the inn, Davis fakes an injury to get the general away from the TV while Wallace makes the announcement. Wallace asks the men of the 151st Division to come to the inn in Vermont on Christmas Eve. He also sings, "What Can You Do with a General?" This song is the smaltiest piece of crap I have ever heard. Betty hears the truth and heads back to Vermont in time for the show. Emma, who is now on board, convinces the general to wear his uniform. When the general gets downstairs, it is full of men from the division. They sing The Old Man again. This is followed by "Gee, I Wish I Were Back in the Army," a song I kind of like. When the show is finished, Wally and Betty declare their love, followed by Davis and Judy doing the same thing. The flats are moved aside to reveal it is snowing outside. They raise their drinks and toast, "May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white." Wallace sings "White Christmas" again.
Here's the world-famous short summary.
Girls just want to have fun. Don't ever watch this movie. If you enjoyed this week's show, please tell your friends, and if you really want to help, drop over to iTunes to give me a review. If you want to comment, recommend a movie, or just say hi, follow the links in the show note to my site. Beware the Moors.